61% of women have no idea that their partner is cheating. And so if 1 in 3 men cheat, there's a whole lot of women out there that are getting their confidence and their heart ripped out all at the same time. What are the signs that we can look out for so that we don't actually get betrayed?
Look, I think that we have to, on one level, make space for people who are very, very gifted liars, because there are some of those. We have to acknowledge that there are some people who are so good at living a double life that the idea of you blaming yourself in some way for not seeing some kind of a clue or a red flag along the way is it's misguided. Their ability for deception and living a double life and fracturing themselves and compartmentalizing is not your fault or your responsibility. But I think in any relationship, just looking for the incongruencies is really important. Are there areas where we find ourselves not asking questions because we're afraid of the answers? Are there any areas where we find that we're ignoring some deep intuition or gut feeling that something isn't right? And when we get that feeling, are we expressing it to somebody else? That doesn't mean, by the way, that when we do express it, that they're going to suddenly come clean and we're going to get all of the answers we wanted. But I do think it's worth paying attention to relationships where we fundamentally don't feel safe and where that is coming from. And sometimes it's hard to trust. That's the really hard part, is sometimes it's hard to trust ourselves in those situations because we feel like, well, I've been, too suspicious in the past, or I've been hurt in the past. And so that's my dial for picking up on things is like way too sensitive these days. And I go into a whole story in my head the moment they haven't texted me back for 2 hours. There are situations like that. But I've always found that outside sources are it can be good to go to friends and people we trust to just present facts, but not try to justify things or say, yeah, but they blah, 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 and their work this and that. Just present the facts to people you trust and just say, would you feel in some way uncomfortable here?
Don't you think things like shame, though, get in the way of us being open and talking to people? Like it's weird, but like the thought of like the embarrassment of it. I can't believe they cheated on me. Maybe I'm not good enough. And so you stay quiet. And in that staying quiet, you then either ignore the flags or ignore the signs. And then you stay in that relationship and then you find yourself heartbroken.
I mean, I think shame plays a huge role in cheating, is this internalization that we're not enough. We're not good enough. It's embarrassing. It's deeply, deeply painful. It's all just a door that we don't necessarily want to open. When we really want something to work, there's a cognitive dissonance that we practice that is trying to make the relationship right. Our mutual friend, Dr. Ramani, talks about betrayal blindness, where someone is doing something that's obviously wrong, but our desire to remain in the relationship, our desire to see the best in this person, to justify the amount of time we've spent with them or invested in the relationship, to not want to feel like, we're acknowledging something, because then if we acknowledge it, we might have to do something about it, right? So it's easier to just find some kind of justification. And it's amazing the things that we can choose to ignore when we're in that state. It's kind of, you see it even outside of the context of cheating in relationships where we just gradually find that none of our needs are being met. And we're just essentially living in service to the other person. We see them when it's good for them. When they're ready to take a break from working, that's when we take a break so that we can be with them. We're always thinking of them. They're never thinking of us. We practice endless empathy for that person. They don't show 1 ounce of understanding of what we're going through. We listen to them. They have no idea what's going on in our world or our inner world. You can get yourself into a situation like that where you essentially completely lose yourself. And so much of it is because it feels like we can't afford to lose this person. for any number of reasons. You know, we worry that it's going to be too late for us if we leave. We worry that we'll never find anyone that we have this connection with again, that we'll never be happy again, that we'll be alone forever. Or, you know, we feel so bonded to this person in the trauma bond of, you know, feeling like there are these terrible lows, but then they rope us in again with the incredible highs. And we then become married to this dynamic that simultaneously makes us miserable, but also we feel like we can't afford to lose, which is a special kind of hell. And so I think that applies to situations where there's something that's not adding up about their behavior. You know, they never come home, or you can't reach them, or, you know, and you consistently can't reach them. And when you can't reach them, it's not like you get a phone call 10 minutes later, you get a phone call 7 hours later, and with a bunch of strange excuses that don't quite add up. You know, when I talk about avoiders, I mean people who will do anything to avoid having the difficult conversations. They'll do anything to avoid, people do it also when they're trying to keep you in limbo, never giving you a real relationship. They won't talk about the fact that it's not a relationship or that they don't want a relationship, because if they talk about it, then the party might be over. But they're also hoping you won't talk about it. They're relying on your fear, because an avoider needs another avoider. You know, a liar doesn't need a liar is just manipulating you, you ask me a direct question, I give you a lie. But an avoider is someone who is like, well, you never asked. And that's, the danger is that we end up becoming the dance partner of avoiders, because we never want to go there. We never want to ask the difficult questions, instead of pointing it out and saying, something feels strange about this. I don't like this.
And is that typically because we fear that it could turn into gaslighting, where you're then being blamed for it, it's your imagination, you're being paranoid, and now to that spiral and that rope that you were saying, you know, that hard in the middle, now you're almost gone even deeper, because you already weren't sure whether you're being overreactive or seeing it for what it was. And now that person is using that against you. Well,
that's a kind of hallmark narcissistic relationship pattern. That, you know, I think there are multiple reasons why we don't bring things up. In a narcissistic relationship, that's often one of them, because you learn that bringing something up somehow ends up leaving you worse off. Right? Your self-esteem, you feel completely untethered to reality, you're called crazy, they freeze you out for even asking and punish you for asking a direct question. But we do it in non-narcissistic relationships as well. We do it in any situation where we just are afraid of the answer. You know, I might be having a really lovely time dating you, and I don't want that to stop. But I'm afraid that if I ask you, where is this going? And you give me an answer I don't want, and you say, honestly, I'm not ready for a relationship, I don't want a relationship, I don't believe in monogamy, or whatever it is, I then am met with the reality. And when I'm met with reality, that's really hard, because now I have to do something about that, or not. And I stay anyway, and now I can't even hide behind, I'm staying because there's possibility. I'm now just disrespecting myself, and I know it. And that then starts to truly erode our confidence, is that I'm very openly shunting my needs to the side and just staying with this person because I think I can't afford to lose them. So it's easier not to ask the question, because then we keep our cognitive dissonance intact. I don't have to feel the shame of knowing and still not doing anything. So there's a lot of that in these situations. Yeah,
just as you were talking, I was thinking about, from a female standpoint, if you have identified and really worked on your confidence, and it's like, you know, you should try and show up and be a freaking badass, and then you get cheated on, if I'm just going to speak for myself. I would go through a whole process of how are people going to think of me?
Yeah.
Forget about how I think of myself. Forget about even the relationship itself. But how are other people going to perceive me? Are they going to think that I'm weaker? Are they going to think that I'm foolish, right? Fill in the blank. We all have that negative thought. And that's why I really wanted to start with you on how cheating it not only can break our hearts, right, to our core, it can destroy everything that we believe in ourselves. And I actually have a list that I pulled out, and I just sat there and I said, okay, what are all the reasons that I go through in my head if Tom was to cheat on me? Like, what are all the things that I would feel bad about, shame myself about? And I went through, it's like age, beauty. If I just had kids, is it because I just had kids? If I put on weight, is it my weight gain? Did I give him enough sex? Or, you know, the other thing, which slight side note, is like, oh, well, only men cheat, women don't, right? So like all these beliefs that I have in my head. And so I started just to do a Google search of like, who are all the women that have been cheated on? And who are they? And so when I gave myself, well, it's age, if you get older, freaking J-Lo. J-Lo got cheated on. And the woman's like in her 40s, looks, like forget about the looks, just the age clearly didn't make a difference to J-Lo. Beauty, Halle Berry got cheated on. She's like the most stunning woman on the freaking planet for like the last 30 years. Kids, after kids, Eva Longoria had children, was cheated on. So the weight gain. Jennifer Garner was cheated on. She's got a freaking banger body. Not enough sex. Sienna Miller. Remember when she was dating Jude Law and he cheated on her with a nanny? She openly said, like, I was having sex constantly with him. So even though he cheated, it had nothing to do with how much sex you're giving the guy. And then just, the final one where it's like, and I know obviously this being a female channel, I very much focus on the females, but I never want to dismiss the guys or make the guys feel badly. And the truth is that women absolutely cheat. And you get the example of Kristen Stewart cheated on Robert Pattinson, who was like one of the most handsome, famous guys at the time. So all the shame and the guilt and the self-judgment that we put on us, I'm really trying to debunk that. And I'm really trying to, and you've already said this, right? Shine the light on it's the person that cheated. And at least helping to understand why. For me, maybe my audience doesn't care, but for me, understanding why someone does it allows me to detach the personal. It's me, I'm too old, I'm not giving enough sex, I'm aging, fill in the blank, and allows me to understand so that I don't have my self-esteem drug in the dirt if I was to find out that I got cheated on.
I think with cheating, it feels so, well, the obvious, it feels like such a utter betrayal of the promise of the relationship, the rules of the relationship, what you're giving to each other, what you've been giving as a level of loyalty to this person, the things you would find yourself unthinkable to do to someone. And this person went and did that. It's the betrayal that we feel in that situation is so deep and it feels so personal. As you're talking, I find myself going to like other examples of things that person could do that we wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't compute in the same way as it's my fault, you know? Like, I don't know. It's like they went to a store and stole a bunch of things off the shelf. Like, it's my fault. I didn't buy them that shirt when I could have, and it's my fault that they stole that shirt. They, did a bunch of drugs this weekend. It's my fault. I wasn't entertaining enough last weekend, so they felt they needed to go and do a bunch of drugs this weekend. It's kind of like, we wouldn't as easily make those connections. And when it's cheating, understandably, because it feels like, well, this is an intimate thing that we do together that it's supposed to be sacred in our relationship, and you have gone and done this with someone else. It feels so personal, but I think it can be easy to forget that this transgression is still something, like many things that they could do, that is, you know, outside the lines of what you would find acceptable. It's just that our insecurities can very easily latch on in this particular example. But that doesn't mean that the reason someone cheated has anything to do with any of the insecurities that you're talking about. You know, when I think of one of the lenses through which I think of cheating is through a lapse of personal standards. That, you know, people who don't cheat in relationships, it's not just because they're never attracted to somebody. People who don't cheat in relationships is because they have a standard for themselves. And they have a standard for how they treat not just you, but people. That they wouldn't make that kind of a promise to someone and then break that promise. And so there's for someone who cheats, albeit maybe not for good, but for that moment, there's been a lapse in a standard. And, you know, I think one of the things that makes it so hard, let me reverse the lens here. One of the things that makes it so hard on people that do cheat, who have a strong moral compass, is that they find it very hard to overcome and forgive themselves for that lapse in their own standard. And if they value that standard and they value the kind of person that would uphold that standard, which, by the way, if you're the person who's been cheated on, you're the person, there's a kind of, in some ways, there's a power to the fact that you're the person who upheld the standard. And it's worth connecting to that, because instead of feeling like, you know, I'm on the receiving end of, I'm the victim of this awful thing that someone has done, they've wielded a kind of power. Actually, you could review it completely in reverse and say they lost their power. I have been standing in my power as someone who has beautifully upheld a standard. And one that can take work to uphold. It takes loyalty. It takes, you know, really valuing the relationship. It takes valuing yourself and saying that I am someone who keeps my promises. There's a self-respect element to that, not just a respecting another person element to that. And you're the person who kept the standard. So that makes you very powerful. And actually what a lot of people feel when they cheat is that they lost their power. They felt that they've let them, not just you down, they've let themselves down, and that there's a deep, deep sense of shame and guilt that comes with that. And a lot of people, you know, who cheat end up going on their own therapy journey to forgive themselves. Not just go on a journey in the relationship to be forgiven, because your partner can forgive you and you still hate yourself for what you've done and for the pain you've caused someone you love who didn't deserve it, and for the way that you've let yourself down, and for the fear that the person that you love is never going to see you the same way again. And that's, of course, all part of for two people that choose to stay together, that's like all part of the repair and the healing that needs to happen after something like that. But I can guarantee you, someone sitting in therapy who hates themselves for having cheated is not feeling powerful. Now, there are people in this world who share no such moral compass,
right,
who cheat and feel nothing, and only feel aggravated that they've got found out, and that being found out has now affected their day-to-day existence, and you're now being difficult with them, and you're taking so long to forgive them. Can't you just get over it already? Like, really? This was a year ago. Like, why are we still talking about it? You know, like, there's that person who has no empathy and who doesn't see the journey ahead of repairing. They don't want there to be a journey of repairing. They're just like, I just want you to go back to the way you were. Why haven't you gone back to the way you were already? You know, that's a different thing. That's a different thing. And, you know, of course, someone like Dr. Ramani would say that's narcissism.
I assume you can never go back to the way it was, because the way it was before the cheating came out, before you cheated, before we spoke about it, before I know about it. Because the way it was before was you weren't a cheater and I didn't know about it.
Yeah, and that's the heartbreaking part, and it's part of the grief. And it's grieving that both people end up inevitably doing, is that it feels like something has been lost, and maybe something has been lost. There's a story that we have been upholding, that I would never cheat on you and you would never cheat on me, and that story has been dismantled in this act. One of the hard things about being human is when we shatter a reality, or when something dies and we have to learn to erect something, a new story in its place. And sometimes we get so overcome with the grief of what's been lost that we can't see that there's still the possibility of a new story to emerge. And I think that's where the silver lining is that, you know, not everyone who experiences infidelity finds themselves in a doomed relationship, or even in a kind of trust that can never be repaired, or a beautiful story that's now been ruined for good. Not everyone who suffers infidelity or who cheats finds themselves in the long term in that reality. There are people who come through it. And the hard part is what it takes to come through it, and what's going to be required of both people.
If you wake up every morning craving that first cup of coffee, but also actually dreading the bloating, the jitters, and the crashes that come with it, you're so not alone, especially for us women. But let's face it, what's the alternative? Zombieing through our morning half awake? Now, there's finally a coffee replacement actually designed for women from Peak called Nandaka. Every cup of Nandaka nourishes you and uplifts your energy instead of making you feel anxious and jittery. Nandaka is expertly formulated with the highest quality and purest ingredients to activate your metabolism, provide sustained energy, and balance your hormones. Kick your coffee habit and enjoy the endless wellness benefits from Nandaka from Peak. Now, for a limited time, you get 15% off, plus a free starter kit and a bottle of Propolis throat spray when you shop the link you see on the screen, or you can find it in the show notes. That's 15% off plus a free starter kit. Transform your mornings with Peak.
There's a real severity to what it does to people, cheating. All of life, though, is a kind of, there are so many deaths in life. So many things die in our life, you know, a story of what something was, an era of a relationship, a chapter of our lives, you know, a way we used to be, or a way we used to relate to someone, or there are many deaths in life. And I always find there to be great comfort in this idea that we don't have to live in the grieving of something that has died. Something bigger can come back. You know, we in Lord of the Rings, it's a geeky reference.
I love your geeky references. I was waiting for one.
I was waiting for the moment where you went into Gandalf the Grey. There was a moment, you know, in the Fellowship where, you know, they're in the mines of Moria, and Gandalf, he falls, and we think that he's gone forever. You know, we think that he died, and he did die, but not in the way that we thought, because he comes back as Gandalf the White. Gandalf the Grey is gone, Gandalf the White comes back, and someone wiser and stronger comes back. And, you know, relationships can, between the right two people, come back. They can be the Gandalf the White that comes back again, even stronger and even more beautiful, and with its own kind of exquisite beauty that could only have come from the realizations that were arrived at in that process of death and healing and rebirth. And it takes two very special people to make that happen. And I don't think anyone should ever judge from the outside what two people decide to do in a relationship, because relationships are messy and they're complicated. And sometimes there really are things, there are relationships just worth saving. Where all the problems start, in my opinion, and never end, is in a relationship where one person acknowledges the road ahead that now has to be gone down in order to have that rebirth, and another person doesn't want to acknowledge that at all. The other person just wants to get on with it, just wants to, you know, can we just go back? Can you just move on from this already? When you've got one person who can't acknowledge the work that now has to be done, that's a real problem. And there are a lot of people who find themselves with someone who has cheated, who really has no appreciation for what has to be done, and frankly, in some cases, just doesn't care. And we're now the ones doing the work on our own to try to heal and repair. Because, by the way, it's one of the really, you know, life is full of unfair things. One of the unfair things about being cheated on is that if you're on the receiving end of that, you have to do a lot of work. So it's like you did something, and now I have to do all of this work to heal and to trust again and to find a way to be happy again in this relationship and to find a new story. That's an awful lot of work, which means that you better, if you're going to do all of that work, you better be sure there's something that you feel is genuinely worth saving.
How do you know the difference then in those moments between a mistake? Or in fact, I had someone say a mistake, cheating isn't a mistake, it's a bad choice. A mistake is when you step on someone's foot because you miscalculated where their foot in the floor is. A choice is you decided to do something and it was a bad decision. It's actually really like that difference between mistake and choice. So I just wanted to correct myself as I was saying it. So someone that's made a bad choice in having an affair or sleeping with somebody else versus this is a character of theirs and they see the world a different way, and they will not always be able to promise to be faithful, even if the words come out of their mouth. Because it is really hard for me, Matt, really hard for me to process how someone can say, I love you, how they can be kind, considerate, have a family, have kids, nurture, pay attention, and then have a slip up. It's very hard for me to understand. So as I go through it, okay, Lisa, have you ever made mistakes in your past? Yes, but I know consequences, and I know if you step off, like consequence, if you step off a 4-story building, you're going to probably plummet to your death. So most people don't accidentally step off a 4-story building. So how do people accidentally cheat? And then how do you know whether it's a character flaw or if it was just a bad choice?
Well, people, I would say, do things all the time that in a better or more connected or more appreciative or more healthy state of mind, they look back on with great regret. So, you know, there are times where we, you know, it's like our brain gets hijacked by a desire, by a insecurity, by you know, it's like if we say something to our partner in an argument that's really hurtful. Yes, we made a choice to say something really hurtful, but we've all had that moment where our brain gets hijacked and we say something and we almost instantly go, I shouldn't have said that. that wasn't a good thing to say. That was uncalled for. That was a step too far. And we feel shame and regret and guilt and all of that. So there are moments in life where we do things that afterwards in a better state of mind, sometimes we can't believe we did that, And sometimes it's not, I can't believe I did that 10 years ago. Sometimes it's, I can't believe I did that last year. And in some ways, we have to, for our own forgiveness and to be able to move on from certain things, we have to at a certain point be able to say, that's not who I am. It's something I did. Because otherwise, self-forgiveness isn't possible. If every mistake was a life sentence, we'd all be in trouble. And this is me not talking about cheating right now, but just in general in life, I think we have to at least stand back and go, how many of my mistakes in life would torture me every night, every waking moment, if they were a life sentence, if I had to say that's who I am, as opposed to that's something I did. And it's something I regret. There's a British poet, David White, who, talking about regret, said he can't understand this culture we have today of like #no regrets. He said, if you don't regret anything, where have you been? If you're living on this earth, it's wholly natural to have regrets. This idea that we kind of pathologize regret as if it's like there's something deeply wrong with regretting something. I regret nothing. It's like, where have you been? Regret is a very human feature, and it's a good one, because regret, as David puts it, is something that instructs us. If I regret how I hurt someone, if I regret saying a mean thing to someone at school, and that changes the way I treat people as an adult, that regret was very powerful. It's the people who have no regret you should worry about. The people who feel no regret are the people who cannot learn. It's one of the reasons, narcissists are so dangerous, is because when they don't experience regret the way that you and I do, there's no internal instruction that is leading them to somewhere better. They're going to do it again, and they're just going to hope that they don't get caught this time because it was a hassle to get caught last time. Big difference. So to that extent, I think people do things in states of mind that are dangerous states of mind, either for themselves. We all know people who hurt themselves when they're in a certain state of mind, and it makes them dangerous to themselves in those moments. And there are people who, in poor states of mind or unhealthy states of mind or disconnected states of mind, have the potential to hurt somebody else. And that's why, to me, in some ways, the scariest thing for the future about someone cheating is, how do I know that you doing this was it was either you revealing that you have a very different moral compass to me. I had been assuming that we were occupying the same moral ground, and it turns out you had been lying about having the same morality as me. And I just discovered it in the fact that you think this is okay or not a big deal, and I do. That's a much, much bigger problem. If you find that someone has deep regret and shame and guilt over this thing, then what you have is a person who deviated from their moral compass in the moment that they did that. Which begs the question, what state of mind were you in? And what caused this lapse in your judgment, your morality, what you did, not what you thought was okay to do, because clearly with how upset you are, you don't think it's okay to do it. So something happened for you internally that your normal decision-making was off, and you did something that deviated from what you normally do. So we have a couple of issues. One is that you were in that state of mind, and the second is that your reaction to being in that state of mind was to do this thing that has utterly wounded me and devastated me and created this possibly terminal fracture in our relationship. So what was that mechanism? And me trusting you, like I just need to trust you again, is kind of not the thing that needs to happen here. I need to somehow find trust again, if we're going to try to stay together, that whatever state you're in is either one that you're not going to find yourself again in again, which is unlikely, by the way.
Right.
Or that when you do find yourself in that state again, which is far more likely, that the response to it is different. And the whole journey to trust again is how do you, it's not my job to believe you that you're going to react differently the next time that happens. It's your job to convince me and to show me somehow that whatever mechanism led to that is never going to happen again. And that's a hard thing to arrive at, because you have to come to believe that that person is no longer capable of doing that in the way that they were before. And you have to be able to give yourself a good answer to that. Otherwise, how are you ever going to trust someone again? It's not your fault that you can't trust them. In many, many cases, it's that you haven't seen what you need to see to believe that that mechanism it has changed, and that the response to that state of mind would be different next time around.
Wow, that was such an incredible breakdown of how to approach something like that. And you're so right that we say, or people will say, you know, you just got to trust me again. And it puts the onus on the person who has been the victim, if you will, versus the person who's done the damage in the first place. That never actually occurred to me before. You actually have something in your book called Why Do We Say Yes to the People Who Are Bad for Us? And you break down 5 different things of why we end up saying yes to people who are bad for us. I'd love to go through those 5, because as we talk about this, a big part of it, I think, is having your own self-esteem and confidence to be able to say, this is what I'm going to accept, this is what I will not accept, versus where I see a lot of people if they've been in relationships where they have infidelity, it's the rush to try and get back to where you were. It's not A, what are they going to do? But then B, what are you going to do? How are you going to build your self-esteem? And so if you don't mind taking us through those 5.
Let me pull out the book for this one, because I'll make sure I get them in order. So there's a chapter in the book called Never Satisfied. And in this chapter, I talk about the various reasons why we keep going back to people who hurt us or are bad for us. The first one is the scarcity mindset. It's the idea that we are never going to find someone like this again, that we're never going to find anyone again in some cases, that we're the last one left at the party, and that, you know, all my friends are pairing off and I am going to be left on my own. It's never going to happen for me. And when we start believing that one of the first places we go is to start having less rules about what we need and what's acceptable, because we feel like that's kind of a shortcut to connection, is to lower the bar. And what we tend to do is not lower the bar in productive ways, like lowering the bar on superficial things. We lower the bar on the deep things that create a great relationship. And that typically is one of the big reasons why we find ourselves in very abusive or, relationships that starve us of our needs of affection, of dignity and respect.
Before you go to the next one, I'd be curious to know if as you get older, are you more likely to accept cheating or less likely? Because if that's true about the scarcity mindset, let's face it, the older you get, the scarcer mindset you get because your pool of selection goes down.
Depends what conclusion you've come to. If you've got to a point where you say, my worst fear in life is dying alone, then you might start saying, well, anything's better than that. So I'll take someone who, is a philanderer. I'll take someone who doesn't treat me well, as long as at the end of the day, I still have someone. You've got someone else who maybe has been hurt so badly and has experienced such trauma from a relationship that for them, I've worked with plenty of people in their 40s or 50s or 60s who have come out of a 10 or a 20-year narcissistic marriage or an abusive marriage whose association with relationships at that point is so painful and so traumatic that the idea of being with another person ever again is that becomes the greatest fear. And so they just avoid relationships altogether because they're like, I can never go back to that. So it really depends on what association you've made. What's the biggest fear? Because that's the thing you're going to avoid.
Yeah, so true.
The second reason we go back to the wrong people is because it's what we know. So this, I give the example of like the dolphin in captivity who gets used to humans coming along and making them jump through hoops and do backflips for fish. Well, if you release that dolphin into the ocean, the fact that the dolphin thinks that it has to do tricks in order to get food, which is like those tricks have no value in the open ocean. Or if that humans come along in a boat and that dolphin swims up to the boat thinking humans equal food, but actually in this situation now, humans might mean, danger. We don't think the dolphin has a self-esteem problem. We think, no, the dolphin learned the wrong associations very early on. It's a very common thing now to almost label everything a self-worth issue. Like whatever it is, whatever you're doing, it's because you don't value yourself. It's because you lack self-worth. And it's not a wrong conclusion to come to, but sometimes it misses the point. We don't think the dolphin who's doing backflips for fish has a self-worth problem. We think it was unfortunately raised in captivity and made to think that the way that it learned to get fed there did not equip it for the ocean. And sometimes we grew up in environments that what we were taught we had to do to get fed emotionally, to get love, or what we were taught that we had to put up with for the privilege of being loved, did not equip us for the world of relationships as an adult. So now we find ourselves trying to do the same tricks or trying to, perform in the same ways in order to be good enough for someone or to get fed, or putting up with the same behavior in order to get fed. That leads us to destruction and chaos and heartbreak and people who regularly cheat. And so what we know is that it creates a lot of self-compassion to think of it through that lens. I'm not crazy, and I'm not someone who, it's not that I'm broken, it's that there has been some wiring that's happened with me at a time in my life where I did not choose my wiring. And that has made some very bad associations for me. And there are certain instincts that aren't serving me because I learned the wrong instincts early on. That's why we have to be very careful with throwing around phrases like trust your instincts. Because actually your instincts can be very dangerous. Sometimes our instincts are right, And I sometimes think when people are talking about instincts, what they're really talking about is intuition. Like intuition, I always think of as a deeper kind of knowing. But instincts can be something that we learn. And we can develop bad instincts. You know, my boxing trainer, you know, I remember he would always say, your instincts, when you get in the ring, your instincts can be the thing that gets you knocked out.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't you even say your instinct is when someone throws a punch is to close your eyes? And
When someone throws a punch, if you've never been in a boxing ring before and you've only ever hit the heavy bag, and now you find yourself in a ring, someone throws a punch, when you see a fist coming towards your face, most people's reaction is not to block or parry. Most people's reaction is to do this.
Close your eyes and
So, you know, what he said is, I need to train you. So I need to turn your instinct to blink into your instinct to block. And when you realize that, oh, blinking was my first instinct, but blinking made me go blind in the very moment I needed to see. And then you start applying that to your love life. So I have an entire chapter in this book called Question Your Instincts. It doesn't mean doubt your instincts, because your instincts can be right. But you can also have learned some poor instincts, and it's important to differentiate between the two. Some people's instinct when they don't get a text from someone is to try harder. Some people's instinct when someone is being mean to them is to fawn and to try to get that person to like them even more. You know, these instincts are bad instincts that get us hurt. So, but we learned many of these instincts at a time in our life where we were just trying to survive.
I love that so much. And what it does is it, again, like stops us from blaming ourselves or shaming ourselves. And I'm such a person of like, I need words. When I'm going through something emotional, I sometimes can't force my mind to convince myself not to feel the emotion. So I need words. So that dolphin analogy was so strong. Like I want everyone right now, when they find themselves in that moment, to turn around, and when they find that their maybe instincts have led them to something that they didn't actually want, to just give themselves the grace and say, oh, I was the dolphin. And so now it changes it from beating yourself up because you made either a mistake or you did something that now you're embarrassed or shameful about, and you go, oh, I didn't know any better because that was my instinct taught as a child. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Right. So the second reason we get drawn to the wrong people is what we know. The third reason, and you know, this is a big one, is that we're staring at the wall.
Yeah.
And this is this idea that, you know, the race car driver Mario Andretti said, if you want to not crash, don't look at the wall, because the car will go where your eyes are focused. And too many of us, if you're the dolphin in captivity who has always had a certain kind of experience, you come to think that that experience is just life, right? That's just the way life is. Instead of, oh, this is the wall I keep crashing into because it's the wall I know. And I have to at some point say, oh, the reason I keep crashing into this is not because the wall is everywhere. It's because I have been trained to expect a certain kind of treatment. And if I want to experience a different kind of treatment, I might have to start positioning my eyes in a different direction to a different kind of possibility. And that's a hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to do. It might mean putting ourselves in a different environment. It might mean dating a kind of person we've never dated before. Just to have the experience that a different kind of person is possible than the people that we've dated in the past. You know, oh, there are nice people around. There are kind people around. Not everyone is this kind of person. And you know, like when someone has been staring at the wall too long, because you'll say, someone will come to you and someone will come to me and they'll say, God, it's just like, guys just don't believe in monogamy these days. And I'll go, wow, you must have been spending a lot of time around one kind of guy. Because if you keep finding yourself attracted to and spending too much time with those kinds of guys, then eventually you're just going to think that's guys. But that's not all guys. But in order to get our attention away from the wall, we have to start giving attention to new experiences and new people and the kinds of things that wouldn't normally be on our radar. The fourth reason we get attracted to the wrong kinds of people is because it's our level. And this is where we do get into self-worth, is when we have experienced something our whole lives, it becomes what we know. It becomes the wall that we search for everywhere we go because it's what we know. But it also ends up becoming what we think we deserve, because our brain just goes, well, if I've never got anything else, this kind of must be my level. Because we see other people getting more sometimes, and we go, yeah, but that's for them. It's not for me. It's almost like our brain goes, if it was for me, I would have had it already.
Is it like a protective mechanism from the ego to not feel badly?
Well, I think we're deeply uncomfortable with things that are different to us and new to us, right? So if we get more than our level, it makes us feel deeply uncomfortable. I never used to understand fear of success. You know, when people say fear, you know.
I still don't understand it.
I came to understand that I've, on some level, probably always had a fear of success, because it really, the way that it made sense to me was just when I understood that fear of success is just this fear of the unfamiliar, that I'm not used to playing at this level, and it feels new, and if it feels new, it's strange and it's scary. I can relate to things in my career where I can feel almost things heating up a bit too much, and then I can almost feel myself unconsciously putting my foot on the brakes, like going, and it's not like, again, I'm someone who always used to say fear of success, like what is that? I get fear of failure, but what's fear of success? But I've come to realize that it's when a new level is just unknown to us, when we've never experienced it, it's inherently scary because it's new.
You don't know what to expect.
We don't know what to expect. We don't know if we're going to be able to hold on to it. It's just safer to stay at home.
It's interesting, actually. Now I'm kind of putting things together. They did this one study of like a bunch of successful people, and they asked like what, you know, they asked them like 1,000 questions or something. And it turns out the one thing that they all had in common was that they all felt like they had a stable home life, and that allowed them to be more rebellious in the business because they had the foundation. So I wonder if you still have the fear of success now that you're married.
I still have to, every new level, I have to break down. I have to like sort of get comfortable with the new level.
Reacquainted, yeah.
And yeah, and like just learn, oh, this is new territory, and I have to somehow find a way to make this home. I think of my comfort zone as being this kind of bubble that keeps getting bigger throughout my life as I keep doing new things. And it's, you know, the unfamiliar is just somewhere I haven't made home yet. And, you know, I'm just finding new parts of life that gradually I make home. But it's always a bit scary. Being in a new country can be scary. And until, you know, when I was 19 years old, I lived in China for a few months, and it was scary. And then when I left, I missed it. And I felt like it was a part of the world that I felt familiar with. And it had like almost been included in my kind of like definition of where I can feel at home. And I sometimes, you know, it's a different point, but I sometimes feel like we forget that. Anytime something is scary, it's just a place we haven't made home yet. But I still, you know, every time there's a new level, I have to like find a way to reset my temperature. And I don't find that's ever a comfortable process. So whenever we're thinking in our love life of something that could be, of something that's making us uncomfortable, we can remind ourselves that if this is more than I've gotten before, there's something about it that's likely going to feel uncomfortable. Someone I write about in the book said, you know, she had just come off the back of a relationship with someone who was really mean to her, really disrespected her, flirted with other people in front of her, never made her feel good enough, put her down. And then she started dating a guy who was attractive and funny, but above all, kind to her. And she said she went home to her mum one day and she said, "Mum, it's the strangest thing. He's so nice to me." And she said to her, "That's how it's supposed to be." But for her, the idea that you could get someone who is attractive and funny, and on top of it, they were going to be nice to you, that felt deeply uncomfortable. And that's when I say our level, what I mean is we set our level at a certain place. This is what I deserve. And usually what we deserve is derived from what we've got so far. And when we get more of it, it makes us intensely uncomfortable. And there's a moment in the book, I want to read this because I think it's really interesting. Yeah. You know Nikki Glaser, the comedian, a big female comedian in the States?
Yes.
I saw her in an interview where she was describing her relationship with having an orgasm. And I put this in the book because I thought this was fascinating. She said, I've always been into being tied up. I'm someone who doesn't feel like I deserve pleasure without having pain. Like, I don't ever celebrate something. I can only celebrate or relax if I put so much work in that I'm dead. It's really hard for me to enjoy myself in life. I have to punish myself first. And so orgasms, it's hard for me to give myself one and let myself have that much. It's too much. It's like Christmas. You have to wait a year for Christmas. You can't have Christmas every day. So I like to be tied up and forced to have Christmas. I don't hear that and go, oh, she's so strange that that's how she operates. I go, oh, that's me. I have to go through this punishing work schedule every day for the privilege of giving myself an hour of peace or joy, or saying I'm now entitled to just stop for a moment. Like, I've done that my whole life. I relate to everything she says there. And it's, you know, when we've set, and many people in their love lives have set their level at, I'm only entitled to someone who's attractive if they're rude to me. I'm only entitled to a relationship with someone who's, you know, in some way, you know, charismatic or attractive or this or that, if they cheat, if they disrespect me, if they're rarely available, if they're inconsistent with their communication. And to ask for more feels like too much, because we've made the association that I can accept love as long as it comes with a giant caveat. And that doesn't make me happy, but it is what's comfortable to me because I've set my level there. And it's intensely uncomfortable to raise our level to something higher.
It's so crazy to me, before you move on, that, and I get it, like it's crazy, but I do it too. The idea that I would rather be comfortable in something that actually doesn't serve me than uncomfortable in something that does serve me. Like it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's damn the truth about humans.
100%. Yeah. That's, you know, what we will do to stay comfortable is pretty unbelievable. And the last one, number 5, the one that I was going to say, the reason we get attracted to the wrong people is, and the wrong things, as I say in this book, why we chase the wrong things, is because it feels good. Like there's also just, you can look at these things simply through the lens of addiction. That, you know, there's a, you know, the same way we gravitate towards food or alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be, is there's an element of fun, feel good, excitement in our love life, you know, dopamine, the oxytocin of like, oh, like being close to someone and rolling around in bed with someone, getting a text from them, dopamine hits. Like there's all these things that are happening that get us in this like junky cycle in our love life that can become very hard to extricate ourselves from. And it can be a very tough pill to swallow, that for a time I might have to actually, you know, cleanse myself of a lot of these types of experiences and feelings, which may for a time feel boring. It may not give me those spikes. Those spikes were fun. Feels good. Someone texts me who drives me crazy, and even though they hurt me last time, oh my God, I just really want to see them because the sex was amazing and it was fun and I love being around them. And, you know, we get addicted to those spikes.
That heated passion does sometimes make you feel alive. And that's where the trick lies, is that in moments of your everyday, right, you do mundane, day-to-day, whatever, you go to work, college, and so I'm speaking for myself here, is that I had my ex-boyfriend before I met Tom. It was incredibly tumultuous. Like, it was highs and lows. So it was screaming matches, then with, makeup sex. And it was, but it felt at the time, being young and not understanding, it felt like exciting.
Yep.
And so once you leave that and you find somebody who's more stable, that can be perceived as boring, which then means that you almost then dismiss the nice guy, let's just quote unquote, and you end up keep going back to the bad boy that treats you badly, but you're addicted to that, the heat and the passion, the electricity.
And I want to like kill the term nice guy, because I feel like nice guy is where guys themselves, it's like it sounds like such a negative thing that I never want to be, right? Because I associate it with so much bad.
That's so interesting. I think of it as being lovely.
Yeah.
But now let's really derail, but I don't perceive nice girl as being lovely. Like, be the nice girl. And I'm like, fuck you, I'm not gonna be the nice, it's almost like step in your place, be polite, speak when spoken to, is how I perceive.
Because it plays into a kind of power imbalance. That
Correct.
Yeah.
And growing up, I got patted on the head by big old men, literally patted on the head saying, be a good girl, stay quiet, speak when spoken to. So the idea of being a good girl and staying silent is what has wired for me in my brain, and that's a negative. But a nice guy means that he's gonna treat you well, he's gonna take you out, he's gonna be polite, he's gonna call you when he calls you.
You might, see, the funny thing about that is that you might have more in common with guys there than you think. In the sense that the same reason the idea of nice girl is kind of like raises your hackles is because you go, I don't, the last thing I want to be is this kind of weak pushover, put in your place, do what you're told, which is something that is, reflective of everything you want women not to be and for yourself not to be, and play into a power imbalance between men and women. But if you take the nice guy, there's so many men who in many ways that relate to that hate the idea of being a nice guy, because for them, being a nice guy means being exactly the thing that has never worked for them, that has gotten them trodden all over by other men and by women. Because that's the funny thing, is like men can be awful towards women. Men can also be awful towards other men. And women can be awful towards weak men. So there's a kind of guy that can get caught in the middle where it feels like I am bullied by men, I'm walked all over by women, and it's all because I'm the nice guy. And it's for what creates that aversion for so many men to the last thing I want to be is the nice guy, because what I've learned is the nice guy is the person that gets walked all over and gets settled for. I think a lot of men feel like they got picked last by women who wanted the bad boy and now settle for him because he's nice to them. But I choose not to see it that way. I choose to see it through the lens of, there was a time in her life where she really valued the wrong things, and she's now valuing the right things, and you're the right things. She now sees what's really valuable. She now sees where the treasure is, and the treasure is you. So instead of seeing yourself as the runner-up, you actually have to see yourself as, I'm first. I'm the one that, when she actually learned what was important in life, she went to me. And I don't think people get there by thinking of themselves as the nice guy, but I think when you think of yourself as the person who brings generosity, peace to someone's life, a sense of safety, kindness, real communication, real vulnerability, like those are all very powerful qualities. They're not, sometimes I think nice implies passive, but kindness implies there's an offense to kindness, It's like that niceness is defense, but kindness is offense. If guys could start to see some of those incredible qualities that make them an amazing partner as offense, not defense, they might start to see themselves as the ones who were chosen instead of the ones that were settled for.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. All right, I've now changed my tune. I will say kind guy. Is that better than nice guy?
We might have to come up with something together.
You've totally debunked my idea though of nice guy, and I do hear you, and it's interesting how the terminologies we use actually will then dictate who we approach and then how they feel about it. Because
No, I'm literally, in my head, I was hearing myself being called, I was imagining like Audrey saying to me, you're a really nice guy. Or I was imagining like, what if Audrey said to someone else, Matt's a really nice guy versus he's an incredible man. Like there's a huge difference in the way I feel about those two things. Hard for me to imagine her saying to someone, Matt's a really nice guy, and me feeling anything positive about that. But if she said, my husband's an incredible man, now you're like speaking my language. And I think that's, like, this is a whole other episode, by the way. We're beginning now a brand new episode in a completely different direction.
This is fascinating though.
But it's real. It's real because we want to be thought of as you're an incredible man for all of the reasons we've just said, right? For how much you show up for the people in your life, for how kind you are, for how generous you are, for how compassionate you are, for how vulnerable you are. Like if those, we hear you're an incredible man and it's because of these reasons, we're going to want to be that. But I don't know that nice guy carries the same connotation for many men.
Fair enough, and thank you for...
Some might hear that and go, I'm happy to be that. But I think too often people feel like that's the kind of euphemism for, you're not that exciting, but you treat me well. And that can create resentment in people.
So you talk about being happy enough is okay, like it's great, it can be great.
I'm curious what you think of this. And for everyone out there, this is the final chapter of this book, which is about how to raise your standards, find your person, and live happily no matter what, is interestingly and kind of surprisingly for a lot of people called Happy Enough.
Yeah, and so it really hit me. And then I was thinking about how do you make sure, or where's that fine line, I should say, between acceptance in a relationship, let's say, where maybe there's infidelity, betrayal, you have to rebuild your trust and things like that. It's like, no, you should just be happy enough. He brings home, let's say from a traditional standpoint, he brings home the food and he takes care of the house and you don't have any problems. You have your money, you have the kids, you have any option that you want. If you want to go out and work, the husband's lovely. He gives you, space for you to go out and work. And then he cheats on you. Where's that fine line then between happy enough and then standards?
Oh, that's so interesting. I hadn't even considered happy enough in that context. So the context in which I bring up happy enough in that final chapter is that for me, happy enough has been a superpower. And happy enough says that what I actually have right now in my life is enough for me. And that in some sense, nothing needs to change and I would still be okay. And that if we can arrive at that place, and one of the contexts I use that in is as a single person, and it should be noted that I started this book, I was single when I began this book, and I finished this book married. The final edit I did on my honeymoon. So, you know, when I was first writing about Happy Enough, this concept was very important to me because I was like, I have to learn how to be happy enough before I meet someone. Not happy, because I found that to be intimidating, right? Like I have to be blissfully happy, and then when I'm that, someone will come along. I thought, this is silly. Like not everyone who got married was blissfully happy before they got married. So, but it also doesn't help to be terribly sad and depressed and feeling like we can't stand our lives. I think our relationship with our life and with ourself is as important as our relationship with other people. And actually, if those are the 3 relationships we all have to improve in order to create a great quality of life, is our relationship with other people, with ourselves, and with life itself. And actually, if you improve if you improve the relationship you have with life, and you improve the relationship you have with yourself, then you will also make better decisions when it comes to your relationships with other people. For me, happy enough was really important because happy enough allows us to say no to the wrong thing. Because you go, I can afford to lose this person. In the marriage you're talking about, or the thing, you know, where someone is, you know, you wouldn't be asking that question about someone who is genuinely happy enough. In a way, you're asking that question about someone who's actually quite miserable. But afraid to lose something.
Certain aspects of their life, they may be miserable, because that's why I pitched it as like, everything else is amazing.
Yes.
And there's one thing that feels like is a heartbreak or something's going wrong in your relationship.
The funny thing is, I would actually say that I would look at it in reverse and say, if you're happy enough with these other elements of your life, that is what gives you the strength to leave something that is not good enough. If you're in a relationship that's not good enough, that's making you unhappy, that's making you suffer, or is just fundamentally not meeting your needs, knowing that you have other things in your life that make you happy enough, knowing that you have the tools and the ability to leave this relationship and still be happy enough afterwards, that's actually where your power comes from. So it's happy enough. That's what I mean by happy enough is a superpower. And look, you know, that's true in every area of life. My power now in business, and you know, we talked about me feeling like every new level is uncomfortable. So how do I do it? How do I, you know, this book, I believe, is gonna take me to another level. And I believe it's gonna bring in all sorts of new, wonderful opportunities. And I guarantee you, I will feel uncomfortable this year. You know, with lots of podcasts and me being out there in the media. And so, like, I'm an introvert. Like, this is gonna feel uncomfortable this year for me. But the reason I'm able to go and take big swings is honestly, Lisa, because I'm like already, I'm happy enough. Like I have a family that loves me, who I love to pieces. I have a wife who loves me, who I love to pieces. I'm in good enough health. I have such an amazing thing that I get to do for a living. You know, if all I could do every year was my retreat and go and help the people that I help on my retreat and in my programs, that already brings me so much fulfillment. I already enjoy that so much that I honestly don't need more. I'm good. And it's exciting to drive after more, and it's exciting to try to reach more people and to help more people and to build new things and get creative. And all of that is wonderful and it's fun. But I honestly, I am happy enough with the way things are. And if all of this goes wrong, and if no one buys a single copy of this book, where I am today is already enough for me. And that doesn't make me go, let me never do anything again. It makes me go, I can swing for the fences. Because honestly, it's not life or death for me whether it comes off. I can go and take big risks, because if it doesn't work, I'm already fine. I'm already happy enough. It's, you know, when we think of someone with nothing to lose, we often think of someone who has nothing. But actually, I feel like I have nothing to lose because I'm already good. If I get cancelled from this interview, if I say something that gets me cancelled today, you know who I go back to? A family and people that love me and get me and know who I am, and a wife who loves me, and my brothers, and I could go back to England and be with all of the people that I just love to pieces, and I think are some of the greatest humans on earth, and I could just hang with them and make my own modest impact on the world. Like I have nothing to lose in that sense, you know, and that's what I mean by happy enough. And that when you have that, you can walk away from anything. No one can give me an opportunity that they can like hold me to ransom with and be like, I'm gonna take this opportunity away if you don't do this. Take it away. Like I in the book, one of the things I talk about is this idea of like, you know how we talk about FU money? Like FU money is basically the amount of money you need to say no to anything you don't want to do. Or to spend time with anyone you don't want to spend time with, right? Well, I like thinking of FU confidence. Like FU confidence is the amount of confidence you need to be able to say no to anything that doesn't serve you, anything that doesn't align with your values, any relationship that doesn't meet your needs, no matter how shiny that person is, or no matter how much that relationship is providing you in other ways. If it fundamentally fails the test of making you feel happy and peaceful, then you can say no to it. That to me is FU confidence. And it's why I spend like the last 3 chapters of this book talking about how to achieve that, because that is your superpower. That is your superpower. And I feel so relaxed when I say that, because it's even as I say it out loud, I remind myself of it and I get connected to it and I go, oh yeah, none of it matters.
Wow, I love that. I was so curious because I've read your book, read the chapter, but then my mind goes off into 1,000 different spirals, right? We're like, okay, but what about in this situation? And how, one, it can either keep us trapped, and I think that's part of like toxic gratitude, where it's like, you should just be grateful. You should be grateful. And this was this is a story from when I was a stay-at-home wife with Tom, whereas like, I didn't want to be a stay-at-home wife, zero like judgment at all. It just wasn't my dream. And so I was a stay-at-home wife for 8 years. And right at the beginning, it was very much like, I'm so grateful, my God, how lucky am I to have a husband that loves me as much as he does. And right now I don't have to work, like this is amazing. And that started to turn into, over time, as I started getting more resentful that I was doing something I didn't enjoy, my fault, not my husband's, because I didn't tell him I wasn't enjoying it. But as I started to get more and more resentful, I started to use the gratitude to keep me where I was. And so it's like, well, how ungrateful are you, Lisa? You want to change your life when you have a husband that loves you? So see how like gratitude can be very serving or extremely toxic. So as I was reading Happy Enough, I thought, oh, it can almost be either as well. Whereas like, it can be such a beautiful thing if you know how to use it right. Or it can be a toxic potential thing if you're just using it as a way to stay in a toxic dynamic. It's like, well, you should be happy enough because of X, Y, and Z that you have. And so thank you for breaking that down. And I love the perspective. So takeaway is shift your perspective into, if, God forbid, you found yourself in a situation where there was infidelity, someone betrayed your trust, that to focus on the other aspects of your life and either be grateful or lean into them so that you're not pulling all your eggs in one basket, if you will, on that partner to make your life either enough or not enough.
And also find you're happy enough in times of pain, even as you're maybe working to change them.
How do you do that?
This is very close to my heart, and this is why the final chapter of this book is centered around this, because for me, the reason happy enough is such an important idea is I went through a time in my life where I had, you know, and you and I have talked about this privately, but I had terrible chronic physical pain. And it, you know, started one year. I had tinnitus where my ears were ringing loudly and it wouldn't go away. And then on top of that, my head started throbbing and behind my eye and my neck and my ear, and would feel dizzy and strange so much of the time. And the combination of symptoms essentially took me out of my life all the time. I couldn't, I didn't think of anything else, or I should say more accurately, it was never not a simultaneous thought track, no matter what else was going on in my life for years. It was always there. And I reached a point where I got to a very, very, very dark place because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was living a very double life because I didn't want to talk about it. It was a step too far for me, vulnerability-wise, to talk about it publicly because I didn't have a handle on it. And it would have almost been dangerous for me to share it with people because I couldn't handle people coming up to me and asking me what it was, how are you? Or worse, people coming up to me and going, you should really try this.
Oh God.
You know, like I couldn't bear it. I could barely deal with people in my own life constantly asking me about it, but to then be asked about it at scale by people on the street, if they knew, that I wouldn't have known how to handle it. And I felt like it would have sent me over the edge. So I was on the edge all the time. And so, you know, I got to a point where I went to a therapy. It was what started me going to therapy was not like some kind of, I'm gonna go and like take my life up a notch kind of thing. It was, I'm not managing. I don't know how to handle this. And all my normal things that I do to try and solve a problem, which I'm good at, are failing me. I am not able to solve this. I tried every treatment. I tried so many different things. I spent so much money, spent so much time. It took me away from my work, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I got to a point where I said to a therapist, I'm just going to live for everyone else, I've decided, because I'm never going to be happy again with this. And it's been this, bear in mind, this hadn't been like 3 months at this point. It had been like 5 years. And over 5 years, when you've tried everything, at that point, you really start to lose hope. And by the way, you find that hope is incredibly pernicious at times because every new treatment, you get your hopes up, like a date. You get a good date and it gets your hopes up and you tell your friends, and it almost feels like just the potential of it helps take you out of your chronic pain of in dating loneliness, of feeling like you're unhappy because you haven't found love and so on. And every time I would go to get a new treatment, it would be like a new promising first date where I thought it would go away and it didn't. And then when it didn't, I would crash harder than ever and I would go into a deep depression. And I remember saying to this therapist, I'm just going to live for other people because it's not, I can never be happy again for as long as this is around because I'm experiencing no joy in my life. I'm never there. Every time everyone else is having a good time, I'm not there. I'm in the room, but I am not there. And he said, that is what you're experiencing is now hallmark depression. It's depression that arose out of something circumstantial, but at a certain point, it doesn't matter, right? Now you're in this dark, dark place. And it became this lesson for me over that period of my life of, well, I now need to find different tools than the ones I've had so far. And I developed from everywhere I was learning from a kind of set of tools that allowed me, really honestly saved my life and allowed me to like, you know, start to begin the process of getting to happy enough. Because I was nowhere near happy enough. When you're in pain all the time, happy enough feels like a distant horizon. And the reason I talk about this, you know, people would say that sounds like a book on pain management, not a book on finding love. But when you're looking for love and you haven't found it, trust me, you're in pain management mode. There's a chronic disappointment. There's a chronic fear that you feel and anxiety that it's never going to happen for you. that you're never going to be okay. I had a woman say to me, Lisa, she did a session with me, and in her first 5 minutes, this is the question she asked. Now, bear in mind, this person has me on their own, one-to-one. I have an inner circle of clients that I had some time for in that way. She can ask me anything in the world. This is what she asked me. How do I kill the hope and the desire of, how do I kill my desire to want to find someone? Because the desire itself and the fact that it's never being fulfilled is making me so terrifically unhappy, and that if this never happens, I'm going to be sad for the rest of my life.
How do I kill the desire?
So not how do I find love?
Yeah.
How do I kill the desire to find love? Because
That's so hard.
it gives me, I get goosebumps as I say it, because that's you know, that's a like, that's a really bad place to be in, you know, to not know a way out. That's a terrible place to be. And that's, you know, it's so funny. I've been seeing more books written lately about, like, you know, get married, why people should get married, and, like, you know, single parents don't do as well with their kids as people in marriages, and that's why you should get married. And I would read these articles and be like, what are you talking about? Do you think that people are just opting out of finding the love of their life? That they decide at 21, you know what I want is just to raise a child on my own. I don't want to meet anyone. I just want to, people want that, and they're struggling, and it's so hard to find it. And it's such a hard area of our lives, because we can't control finding love the way that we can control other areas of our life. If you want to save money so that you have more later, you can just keep depositing money into a bank account. If you have a business and you want to earn more money, you can pick up the phone and make more sales. If you want to lose weight, you can just eat better and train more, and things will happen to your body. But there doesn't feel like there's any corresponding amount of control that we have in our love lives. And it feels like our love life isn't Monopoly, where we can, like, accumulate wealth and houses and properties. It feels like Chutes and Ladders, where you know, you get all this progress and you climb a ladder and you feel like you're in a relationship, and then someone breaks up with you or leaves you or betrays you or cheats, and you just go all the way back down to the beginning again, or what feels like even further back. And you feel like you've had to reset that part of your life over and over and over again, simultaneously thinking that this area holds the key to the kind of fulfilling life that you really want. That is, if people haven't understood that, they haven't understood the depths of how hard this can be for people. And then you throw into that people who want a family, and they feel like time is running out for them to be able to have a family, and they haven't met anyone, and now it feels like someone else is responsible for helping make my dream come true, and I need another person for it. And it's why it's so, you know, I've come to develop just such a compassion for women who are in that situation, who it's so easy for so many people to, like, certain types of guys, not all men, but certain types of men to, like, say, oh, she's crazy, she's in such a rush, she's just trying to, like, speed things up, and yeah, no shit. No shit. This is like her life dream. And she's, in her mind, she needs you for it. Like, of course, and it's on a timeline, and it's on a timeline for men too, by the way, which isn't talked about nearly enough. But, you know, men feel like they have till the day they die, and that is not true for many, many men. But If you said to a guy, that business you want to create, that success you want to make of yourself, everything you want to create in your life, you've got 3 years to do it. And if you don't do it in 3 years, the option's off the table forever. Is he going to be super chill? Super relaxed? Every day he goes into the office?
And I was just thinking about, even after that 3 years, then you turn around to him and say, oh, and the desire you have never goes away.
The desire never goes away. That's the reality. And so I have found that the same tools that helped me become happy enough with my chronic pain, not once it disappeared, because anyone can do that, but like when I was in the midst of my chronic pain, the tools that allowed me to be happy enough, all of which I detail in the final chapter of this book, are the same tools that can allow someone who is single right now, who wants to find love, who intends to find love, to be happy enough right now in a way that allows them to make excellent decisions going forward. Because when we're not happy enough, that's when we start to make decisions that compound the pain in our lives. So it has those tools. I used to only teach them on my retreats, and they were something very personal to me. And they're now things that I have shared in this book, because you can't talk about how to find love without having that conversation about how, in the context of not having found this thing that I deeply want, can I get to a place where I'm happy enough where I stand today? Because all of your magic comes from being happy enough. When I learned to be happy enough, all of my magic came back to me. I was able to go and create magic. I was able to bring a different energy to people. I was able to shine in ways that I can shine. And that's when your life starts to expand again, is when your magic starts to come out. When you can't see past your depression, your anxiety, your fear, your loneliness, your magic gets buried underneath all of that. And to attract the kind of person we want to attract, our magic has to be able to show. So happy enough is a state that allows our magic to start to show itself again.
And just to put the final point, you say it also allows us to stop seeking magic from outside ourselves and from other people and start creating it ourselves, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, and that once you take that power back to be able to do that, you realize that that's already yours. You don't need someone else to be the magic for you. You are the magic in your life. You know, Audrey, I remember early in our relationship, said to me, you know what, people in a breakup, 50% of what they miss is themselves. When they're heartbroken, 50% of what they're missing is them. We think it's all the other person. I'm devastated. I lost 100% of the relationship. Yeah, but 50% of what was special about that relationship was you. And you took that 50% with you. And by the way, when you start actually looking at all of the things you did in that relationship, the ways you showed up for someone, the ways that you were compassionate, the ways that you were vulnerable with them, that made the relationship much more vulnerable than it would have been without your vulnerability. All the little ways that you made it special, like a mum at Christmas, you know, all the ways that, that she decorated the house, like that's, you brought the magic to the relationship, probably, and in many cases, you brought more than 50% of the magic. You may have you may be looking at it through this lens and go, I was like 70% of the magic in that relationship. And when you realize that, you start to realize that that magic is something you have taken with you. And if you've taken it with you, if it came from you, it's yours. And you can create it in any situation with any person going forward. If nothing else, you can create it with yourself. And that should give people an awful lot of confidence.
Matt, this has been incredible. Holy smokes. Where can people find the magic that is you and this amazing book that is going to change people's love lives all around the world?
The website is lovelifebook.com. I mean, it's available, it's published by HarperCollins. It's obviously available if you wanted to go straight to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any of those places, your local bookstore. But if you go, and you can still buy it from wherever you want when you go to lovelifebook.com. We have all of the links for those different retailers. But the nice thing about going to lovelifebook.com is that there's also a section where when you enter your code on your receipt, wherever you got it from, you get a ticket to a live event where I'm going to be coaching you on May the 4th called Find Your Person. So for anyone who is looking at this year going, this is the year I want to find my person, I'm ready to do that healing, I'm ready to make the shifts that I need to make. You know, I'm excited about it again. I want to bring back my magic. This is it's gonna be like a perfect partner to the book, because you'll get to read the book, but you'll also come to the event on May the 4th, which is a virtual event, so people could do it from anywhere in the world. And the event is free. The book is your ticket. So there's no way to buy onto the event. The book is your ticket. And if you order a book, you get to come. So that's at lovelifebook.com.
If you want to learn why people still cheat and lie in relationships, then keep watching.
This is something I love to talk about. Not my wounds or anything, but I just believe a lot of men are suffering. They're suffering in silence internally, and they're causing loud noises externally through their suffering, through their anger, reaction, their harm, their just what they're doing in the world. You know, most of the mass shootings are from men, and these men are suffering. I'm not saying what they do is okay. I'm not agreeing with any of their actions, but I can see where it's coming from. I can see the anger and the suffering. And where does anger come from? It comes from a wound. It comes from a wound that is yet to be healed. And so when you feel so much pain inside and you have not figured out how to mend and create new meaning from past memories, that's when you start to react and unleash in different ways, whether it be in intimacy and relationships. You close off, you can't look at your partner in the eyes, you can't be vulnerable, you can't cry in front of your partner, you can't do certain things because you don't feel safe, because you feel afraid. So it comes back to the triggers. I believe that the wounds cause the most pain if we don't know how to mend them. So I'll just, briefly go over some of the stuff with me. One of my first memories is of sexual abuse from a man that I did not know in a bathroom. Babysitter's house. Her son was about 16 or 17, took me to the bathroom and sexually abused me. That's one of my first.
At the time,
it's 5.
Right?
It's one of my first memories. If you don't have a way to heal that and you just keep living life, that memory is going to keep replaying, or you're going to somehow block a part of yourself.
And how long did you not tell anyone about
25 years. So 25 years of that. But it was also that stacked on a lot of the stuff. And this is not to say I had more trauma than other people. This is not a trauma competition game. But just to give context, my brother went to prison when I was 8 for 4.5 years. So I would visit a prison cell, not a cell, but the visiting room, almost every weekend for 4.5 years. And so from 8 to 12 and a half, I really wasn't allowed to have friends. I didn't have any friends. Because growing up in a small town in Ohio, this didn't really happen in my neighborhood. And so other parents wouldn't let their kids hang out with me. And so I don't blame my brother for any of this. This is just the scenario that happened, right? And what I experienced. And it was all beautiful things for me, for my future. But that was kind of tormenting, for most of my childhood until I was 13. I experienced a couple of these things. And I also just had a very unstable home life. My parents didn't show love to each other. I knew they loved us, kids, but they weren't able to show each other love. And in fact, it was a lot of passive aggressive energy, a lot of yelling, screaming, slamming, physical fights. And so I just felt like I was afraid always, a low level of fear about what's going to happen to me. And I was in the bottom of my class, so I didn't have any skills in school. So I was academically just struggling. And so I was afraid to just stand in front of a group of peers without them laughing at me, because I really couldn't read and write until I got to be older. I still struggle reading aloud today. And so this is just part of the childhood that made me driven to succeed, to try to fulfill a hole in a wound inside of me that I was not enough. Again, there are three main fears that cause us to doubt ourselves in life, in relationships, in our career, whatever it might be. Three main fears. And self-doubt, I believe, is the killer of all dreams. And these three fears cause us to doubt ourselves the most. This is the fear of failure, the fear of success, and the fear of judgment. And at the root of each one of these fears is, I am not enough. And when we can go back to the memories where the wounds are that we have not healed yet, and start to mend those and create new meaning, then we can start to turn I am not enough to I am enough. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey of healing. And so 25 years, I held on to really all that pain, all the shame, all the pain, and those wounds drove me to be successful, drove me to get angry and be jealous when girlfriends would do certain things, drove me to be worried and stressed out, drove me to stay up hours every night ruminating, and I didn't know why. I couldn't sleep. And it wasn't until within days after I opened up about sexual trauma for the first time. Again, the powerless mindset is you conceal past pains. You aren't willing to reveal these things. That means you're ashamed. That doesn't mean you have to reveal them to the world, but you need to be okay with revealing them to someone. And when I finally opened up about one traumatic experience, the sexual abuse, I finally was able to sleep at night without staying up for hours every night. I could finally put my head down and sleep within minutes. And it completely shifted everything. And so it's been a 10-year healing journey of going back and healing different memories that caused me to feel resentful, angry, jealous, frustrated, shameful, all these things. And it's probably going to be a continual journey forever as life happens and events happen and we create new meaning. But when I was able to go back and really, I did a process 2 years ago where I had a photo of my 5-year-old self on my screensaver for about 6 months. And I had a new relationship with my 5-year-old self, which might sound a little weird, but I parented myself the way that I needed to. I parented the wounds and the memories the way that I needed to back then, right now. And I would do sessions with myself, as weird as this sounds. I would do session with my 5-year-old self, imagining my 5-year-old self is standing right in front of me. I talked to him. How you feeling, little Lewis? What's going on? What are you worried about? What are you scared of? And he was able to express what he was afraid of for the first time, as opposed to holding on to it and just trying to be tougher and just figure life out. And as I created a new relationship with my inner child, I was able to hug myself and embrace myself and say, I got you. I'm so proud of you for how you overcame these things. I'm so inspired by what you went through, and you got us here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing what it took to get us here, even though you were confused and scared and not sure why you were even alive and not sure why these things were happening to you. Thank you. You got us here. I'm so proud of how strong you were. And now you can let it go. And I brought him into my heart spiritually and reconnected from a place of healing and wholeness. And I started doing that at my 12-year-old self when I would steal all the time, and started to have a new relationship with my 12-year-old self. So I had a photo of myself when I was 12. I did this with my 17-year-old self. I've done this all the way through to all the past 10 years up until now. And it has given me so much peace of going back and healing those wounds and creating new meaning around why those events happened. Man's Search for Meaning is one of my favorite books with Viktor Frankl, and he lived one of the happiest, joyful, fulfilling lives after going through one of the most horrific things in the concentration camp. And all this comes back to is creating new meaning from these memories. It doesn't mean...
How do you do that though? How do you actually go back? 'Cause, as you were talking, I was trying so hard not to cry because it breaks my heart to think about that 5-year-old boy right now and all the trauma he's having to maybe deal with, the shame, the not speaking up, that's going to be 25 years before he even recognizes it, that then has all these turbulent other relationships, lies, cheats, and blah, blah, blah. And we look at him as well, he's a problem child, or he's just a player. And you dismiss you just dismiss them. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the stats. I'm going to make them up. It's something like 1 in 5 guys.
1 in 6.
1 in 6
Sexually abused, yeah.
And then how many people say it? Like,
Very few,
you're
yeah.
almost like the only guy
Yeah,
that
very
I
few.
know has been so open about it.
Very few.
And so how on earth did you create meaning for that 5-year-old boy?
I mean, again, I don't think I could have done it on my own.
Yeah.
That's why I had emotional coaches, therapists. I did meditation retreats. I did lots of different healing modalities. I mean, I've tried so many different things in the past 10 years, from breathing exercises to Wim Hof and cold rivers in Poland, to going to India for weeks at a time to study meditation, to neuroscience meditation with Joe Dispenza, to different therapists, to emotional intelligence workshops. I felt like for me, it's been a journey of each modality adding something to me and unlocking a new opportunity for growth. There's not some one thing that's like cured everything, and it's always a journey of healing. It's never a one-time moment. But the thing that has worked for me is the consistent emotional coaching every couple of weeks. And I see the power of preventative care, like going to the gym and making sure that the bigger my platform gets, the more opportunities I have for people to critique me. I want to prepare myself to not be emotionally triggered. I want to prepare myself for potential letdowns and not being exhausted for weeks because I don't know how to manage my emotions. And so emotional coaching and therapy has supported me in just constantly showing up for myself and processing it. Here's the thing, once you are aware of it and you face it, you've got to practice it, because the nervous system will bring you back into stress. And so I practiced this in a previous relationship where I was in couples therapy trying to make the relationship work. And at one point, I was like, told the coach, I go, I'm done. I got to get out of this relationship. I cannot deal with this stress anymore. It doesn't work for me. I'm done. And she was just like, I don't think you're ready yet.
To break up?
Yes. And I go, oh, does this person just want more money from me? You know, I was just like, I was like angry. I was like, but I don't want to be in this anymore. I don't like this anymore. And she said, I hear you, and we still have work to do. And if you get out now before you've really mended certain things, and you can create peace in the chaos, as opposed to running away from the chaos, but create peace in the chaos, not abandoning yourself in the stress, you'll probably, most likely, repeat the pattern.
Interesting.
The next person, you still haven't faced it fully.
And it needs to be in the relationship while you
That
do
was
it,
her.
huh?
That was her.
That's fascinating.
Strategy, right? And I was like, I just want freedom. I want peace. I want to get out of this. I can't deal with this anymore. It doesn't work for me. She goes, I get it, but you still are abandoning yourself in the relationship. So when are you going to learn to not abandon yourself? And just saying, I'm done, without facing the problems head on. She's like, you cannot buy peace. You must become peace. So you don't have to stay in this forever. You're not trapped. You don't have to be in this for the next year. But you got to learn certain things in the face of adversity besides running away from it. And I go, oh, I'm so done with this, though. I just want to be out of it. And I think it was probably the best thing for me. I'm not saying this for everyone, because I think if you are really afraid of your life, you should get out of a relationship.
Right.
Don't stay in anything if you are truly in fear. But for me, I decided to give it a couple more months until I was able to stand for my inner child in every moment in a conscious, calm way. So when she would scream or react or not speak to me for 3 days or whatever she was, or make me wrong or judge me or put me down, I just say, you know, this isn't in alignment with what we've agreed to in our couples therapy, of the vision that I have for our relationship, of loving communication. So I'm going to remove myself from this situation. I'm going to go in the other room calmly, and you let me know when you're ready to talk. But this doesn't work for me, for the vision I have anymore.
When you started to change then and talk to her in that way,
She fucking hated it.
I literally was about to say, guaranteed.
She tried to punish me more for not giving in, for not giving her what she wanted, for not doing, for not be like, oh, it's okay, I'll give you what you want. Oh, I'm sorry, okay, here's this, here's money, here's this, or whatever you need. She did not like me being a loving, passionate, wise man.
So how on earth, because you even said, like your therapist said, you know, you need to learn how to create peace within chaos. So you're trying to create peace, but it actually then creates more chaos.
Of course, which makes you want to go back to your old way of being.
Yeah.
And I just was like, because I got to a place where I was like, all right, I am clear that this relationship will either work out the way I need it to with my vision of a conscious relationship, or we won't be together. And either way, I'm fine with that. And so I just got to be so, but I was like, but I will not allow myself to abandon myself ever again in this relationship or any relationship, because that's not working for me. It's causing a pain in my chest consistently, and I don't want this pain anymore. And so the more I did this, there was a period of time in therapy where this ball of pain that I had for years disintegrated.
And you're touching your heart. Was it really?
It was like right in my chest. It was like this pain that would kind of come and go. Some weeks it was more intense. Other weeks it wasn't there. It almost felt like a clenching in my throat as well, because I felt trapped. I felt emotionally trapped. And this pain was intensifying. And there was one day in therapy where it was like after months of, again, facing myself, of going back and creating new meaning, of reflecting on all my parents' behaviors and their model of love and relationships. That's where it all stems from. I realized that I was a free man, but I never felt free. And the first moment I met with my coach, she was like, what's your intention for our time working together? And I said, I want peace, freedom, and clarity, because I feel like I have none of it in this relationship. And all I want is peace, freedom, and clarity. And I wasn't being those things because I felt like I was a trapped human being emotionally. And it wasn't until I was able to mend and heal these wounds from the past where I became peace, free, and clear. I was becoming that, and it disintegrated. That old memory, that old trauma disintegrated throughout my body, and it felt like a lightness. It felt like I was free. So the next time these events would happen in the relationship, I would just say, I didn't have the trigger anymore. Again, the wound, when it happens, I'd be triggered and say, oh, how can I fix it? So now when a scream, an attack, a make wrong, a judgment, a blame came at me, I was able to see it from a different point of view. And I could look at it and say, okay, I don't like this. I don't like someone judging me or blaming or screaming at me, but I'm not reactive. As before, I was reactive. And now I'm calm because I am a free man emotionally. I am a clear man. I am a peaceful man. So I do not need to react and give in to one person who's blaming, making wrong, screaming at me, judging me, comparing me, whatever. All the things, giving me the cold shoulder, the silent treatment, everything that used to cause me stress and a trigger. Now I notice it and say, okay, that's just who she's being. That's who she is. And that's out of alignment with what I want to create for a conscious relationship. She knows what my vision is for our relationship. She knows what a conscious relationship looks like. And she's not willing to live up to that standard that I want to live up to now. And I was just being a stand for my inner child and my vision of a conscious life and a conscious relationship. And there are certain distinctions of a conscious relationship. And if someone isn't agreeing to that, then that doesn't make them bad or wrong. They're just not what I want. And that's okay. So it's learning to accept someone and say, okay, we're not the right fit, or accept them and say we are. And the journey of healing, it's funny, I got a message from, I was telling you before offline that I've been to many prisons, because I would visit prisons a lot when I was a kid to visit my brother. And I've been here in LA, there's some prisons nearby. I've been a few times because my book, The Masking Masculinity, has been kind of shared out throughout some prisons. And I believe that, when men heal, the world heals. There's a lot of men who are suffering and in pain, which causes them to do harm to others, causes them to do things out of alignment with the law and all sorts of things, and the harmony of human beings. And all these things get to be taken accounted for and responsibility for. But if we want the world to really evolve and change in a place of peace and love, then we got to get men to find peace and love within themselves and harmony. And I just got a message I did a speech to all the prisons during the pandemic about the mask and masculinity. They were streaming it live to all the prisons about these different masks that men wear that cause them to project an image in life, relationships, friends, sports, everything, business, to fit in, to belong, to feel accepted, and to feel enough. Because most of the time we put on masks as men because we believe if someone truly knew everything about me, they would not love me. If my woman truly knew this about me, she wouldn't accept me. She wouldn't love me. So we have this fear of not being enough. And I got a message from my friend Scott Budnick, who runs these prison programs for men. He sent me a text with a 6-page letter from an inmate who watched this. And the text said, I met this kid a couple years ago when he got into prison. He was 21. He was a part of a white gang, and he had a swastika tattooed to his chest. Oh, and he's been in solitary confinement for 2 years. That means you get an hour a day outside, and then you're alone for 23 hours. And he said, he sent me this 6-page letter. He just showed me a text of the letter. He sent it to me. And in the letter, he said, I dropped out of the gang. I'm starting to heal my heart. And he said, when he asked him why, he said, Lewis Howes and the Mask of Masculinity. I've read this book 4 times. I'm finally realizing why I was so reactive in life, why the things that caused me to react and do the things that I did wrong. So for me, the greatness mindset really stems down to learning how to navigate and heal your heart, heal your emotions, because these things work together. Our thoughts and our emotions affect our actions. And if we are living in so much pain, we're going to hurt our partners, our friends, our family. We're going to do bad things to humanity if we don't have love in our hearts and peace in our hearts. And so that's why, I'm on a mission to support all human beings in finding that healing and peace, because I know what's available on the other side, and I know how much pain and suffering it is when you don't have it. And like you said, 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused, but most never talk about that, let alone talk about any of their problems. And when I speak in front of rooms, it's usually about 50-50 men and women. And I'll ask the men of the room to raise their hand if they have one guy friend that they can open up to about anything. And if they talk about it once a month about their problems, their challenges, their insecurities, their fears, one. Most of the room doesn't raise their hand. Maybe a couple guys do. And I say, are you guys a part of a church group that meets like once a month? And they kind of laugh and say, yeah, where it's like a safe environment for men to talk about it. And I say, women, how many of you talk to a girlfriend once a day about your insecurities, your problems, your challenges, your fears, your doubts, your marital issues, whatever? And most of the women kind of laugh and raise their hand like every day, like a girlfriend or your mom or sister. Imagine doing this once a month. How would that make you feel if you just didn't talk about these things? Imagine only doing it once a year. Imagine never doing it ever. How would it make you feel if you never were able to share your fears, your pains, your insecurities, your challenges? How would it make you feel? And kind of all the women kind of like joke and laugh. They're like, it'd drive me crazy and I'd probably kill myself. And I'm like, you make a joke about it, but that's what men do. It drives them mad inside, and that's why men commit suicide way more than women. That's why there's 2 million inmates in prison that are men, way more than women. And men suffer so much more with addiction, drugs, alcohol, to try to deal with the pain and the shame and the insecurity, because they are not able to speak it to one human being without feeling like this person will not accept me, they'll make fun of me, they'll laugh at me, they'll beat me up, they'll kill me, whatever it is. And so it's just trying to allow people to go through a process of, again, mending the memories of the past, because they're memories. And a lot of times we build the story up bigger than it was. I'm not saying it wasn't horrible or sad, but we tend to ruminate on the bad parts more. And when we can create new meaning and create peace from that meaning, then we are free. And so this has been the journey for me, and it's a constant journey.
Wow, that was so amazing. Oh God. Do you think that people can do that then while they're in a relationship? Because I'm really just projecting. Number one, I definitely think every woman listening to this, please, for the love of God, share it with your partner or share it with a guy in your life. Because even if it's a brother, right? Like, I just think what you're saying is so profound. And I so often take a female stance of like how we see things and how the struggles that we come with. And I've done so many relationship episodes where it's like, the guy's broken my heart, or he's, like took advantage of me, and
lied to me and
he
this and that.
used me.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm very much about ladies, how do we make sure that we don't just give ourselves over without having some steps, without setting boundaries, like trying to really help women create boundaries for themselves, to what you were saying about it, right? Like to show up in integrity. But the flip side of it for the guys, honestly, I'm just as compassionate and just as empathetic. And I am so honored that you're talking about this on this show, because I think it hopefully will help us not necessarily, like I said, point the finger and go, well, he's just an asshole, right? And then having that maybe compassion. Now, here's the problem though with that. It doesn't mean that you should just let them abuse you, be a bad boyfriend, or have a.
It may not be the right relationship anymore.
Right, exactly.
You might, when I got clear that I got clear on what is the vision that I want for a relationship. What is my vision? I want a conscious relationship. And what does that mean? I want a relationship where when there is an argument or disagreement, we communicate consciously. That means there's no screaming, there's no passive aggressive energy, there's no cold shoulder for even an hour or days, which is what I experienced in every relationship. And I allowed it. So it's me, I wasn't living into my vision because I was wounded and afraid. And so the fear and the insecurity and the wound caused me to act out of alignment with my vision. So once I got clear that my vision is to have a conscious relationship, that means conscious relationship with myself first. That means I must be in full ownership of who I am first before I can have a conscious relationship with someone else. That means conscious communication. That means conscious collaboration. That means conscious agreements. It's not, well, if you don't do this, then it's over. It's, what are we agreeing to together? And can we have even a third party witness our agreements so that no one can say, I never said this 2 years later. Oh, actually we did, and we agreed on this. As opposed to, this is the way it is, and it's my way, the highway. Okay, well, if that's what someone else agrees to, cool. But this is a conscious relationship. This is the vision I have for my relationship. And you may be in a relationship that doesn't work, and you can still heal in the relationship and create conscious relationship together, but you may find out you're not the right match for each other. And that's hard to face. I'm not telling people to break up. But what I am saying, if you're single, make sure you develop a conscious relationship with yourself and get clear on your relationship vision. I got super clear that this is the relationship I want to have before I met Martha. I said, this is what I want. This is what I'm creating. This is what it will take from me. If I want to be create this, I need to become it for myself as well. And then I need to be so clear that this is my boundaries and I'm not going to abandon myself. And so I was saying all these things with Martha when we got into our relationship. And she was like, I love it. This is amazing. And here's where I'm coming from. And I said, cool, I accept that. But if she was like, I want to have a different lifestyle, or I want to live in, I don't know, Mexico full time, I'd be like, well, our lifestyle isn't in alignment with my vision. That doesn't mean you're a bad person or, something's wrong with you. It just means we are out of alignment. And so can we create an agreement? Am I okay with living in Mexico a month out of the year? And I have to check in and not abandon myself. If I'm not, I shouldn't be in this relationship.
Isn't it funny how we convince ourselves that one of us is right and one of us is wrong?
It's not about right and wrong. It's about, are we aligned and a good match?
But we do, though, in those moments, if we haven't done the work like you're saying, of course, it ends up going to, but this is what I want. And
we do that because we're afraid to be alone. And we want the other person to just give into our fears and our needs. This is what I need, and if they're not going to do that, they don't care about me, they don't love me, they're not here for me, they're selfish. And then we live in manipulation of someone else because we're afraid and insecure. As opposed to just saying, okay, that's not what they want for their life. That's okay. 8 billion people, you don't need to force one person into your way. And I'm not saying like everything's gonna be perfect and everything's gonna be smooth the whole time, but it's finding as many agreements as possible to minimize frustration, to minimize arguments and anger and upset. That's all it is. It's just being clear on here's my expectations and what I want to create. Is that your expectation? Cool, now we have an agreement around this thing together. So we're clear, there's less stress around it. And I think a lot of people just don't have those conversations. And then, oh, they didn't do this for me and they didn't do this for me. And it's like, Are they supposed to? Were you clear about this? You know?
That's so true. You actually mentioned manipulation. How much did you have to look at how your girlfriends were manipulating and you manipulating them? It maybe inadvertently sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure we were both manipulating each other. Again, when you're wounded, you're in some type of, I don't think it was like intentional manipulation. It was like wounded and your fears are just causing you to be less conscious. And so you need to protect yourself. You need someone to not do something they did so you feel safe. It's a form of manipulation because you're not comfortable with who you are. So you're needing someone to change to make you happy. Where I don't need Martha to change at all. I am happy. She is happy. We come together to add to our happiness. But when we get in a relationship, not being a happy human being and expecting someone else to do everything in order to make us feel safe and protected and meet our needs, that's just the wrong way of going about it. We need to meet our own needs and fulfill our own happiness and support the other person in their needs, but not be their needs. That is a recipe for pain.
Dude, that's so powerful. And this is the one thing I'm like repeating over and over. It's like, no, you may not need a man, but you want a man.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you just say what you want? And right. And it's like, we so worry about if I say that I need something, am I appearing needy? So that means I shouldn't ask for it at all. But instead, like, just actually own that you want it.
Yeah, I think exactly. It's not about needing. I don't need a relationship. I want a conscious, healthy, loving, abundant relationship. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So that I'm not going to jump into a relationship that isn't that. I'm not going to be in that. Again, it doesn't mean there's not going to be adversities of life.
Right, sure.
But the intention is to build a relationship that wants to create that. That is the vision of our relationship. If I needed a relationship to feel loved, then that's the wrong way to go about it. I get to feel loved and be loved first. I get to love my life first. And I didn't fully love myself in previous relationships, and they didn't fully love themselves. And so we were just two wounded people in every relationship of, I need this, you need that, you don't make me happy, I'm scared, you're jealous, because we're wounded. And so it's just a process of, and maybe that works for people, but that's just not what I wanted anymore.
Is that where the fireworks come from? Because there's so many people in relationships, and you're smiling because I'm guessing that you've had this, where it's like, it's when you argue, it's shit is hit in the fan, the house is burning down, and then as soon as it's over, you make out and you have sex like rabbits, and then
you sweep it under the rug and you repeat it 2 weeks later.
Exactly.
Man, it's just a lot. I mean, again,
Is that the wounds,
I raised
though?
my hand because this was most of my life. So I have compassion and empathy because this is who I once was. But it's just a lot of trauma bonding. And there's a lot of heightened emotions when there's traumas that you're bonding to with someone else. Or when someone is there to fulfill a trauma that you need fixed, or a hole that you need met, filling. And if it doesn't be met consistently, then it's more trauma and more energy and more fighting and explosion. But what I've learned is, for me, that doesn't bring harmony to my life. When there's explosions and fighting and fires, that is not harmony. You're burning yourself down emotionally, up and down, up and down. It's a lot of wasted energy. It's exhausting. And it's not the life or the vision I have for a conscious relationship. Again, if that's the relationship and the life you want, then know that comes with certain consequences. That comes with arguments, that comes with mistrust, that comes with your partner going out and you being jealous and insecure and then fighting and then making up and this whole cycle. That's just not the life I want anymore. It's wasted energy. And when you're clear on your mission and your purpose, which is the first step in my book, which is about getting clear on a meaningful mission, you want to eliminate anything that doesn't support the mission, because you realize I could be gone any moment. This life can be fractured in any moment. And why am I wasting so much energy going up and down with one person where we're out of alignment? It's really about alignment. Doesn't mean they're wrong or bad. Doesn't mean they're right and good. It means, are you aligned? And do you want the best for the other person? If you want the best for them, why would you get upset at them? Why would you scream at them if you want the best for them? If you truly love them in a conscious level, why would you scream consistently and say, you did this wrong? Just wrong to what? Unless you've agreed on it, there's nothing wrong. Them living their life. So if they did something, if Martha cheated on me, I would not scream at her. I would be sad, I would be hurt, I would be disappointed and let down. I'd feel a wide range of emotions. But what does screaming do for me? What does it do for the moment? What does holding a grudge against someone do for me and my mission? It pulls me away from my mission. It pulls me away from my health and my harmony with myself. I may have moments of needing to release and let go. I may need to process it. I may need to, do my own techniques to really get out the emotion of anger or sadness or frustration. But me screaming at someone over and over for what they did to me, that only goes so far. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, is it useful towards my life? And I want peace and harmony. That is my highest currency. It's peace, harmony. And it's just creating a life that supports me with that as much as possible.
So I've processed all of this as well. And I used to be the girl that when in my first relationship before Tom, I was with a guy for about 3 to 4 years. And it was very manipulative. It was very, like screaming and then, the hot sex, all of that stuff. And so what I realized was when I started to do the work, like what you're saying, right? You start to get utter clarity in your behavior, in how you're showing up. And then you start to go, well, why am I doing that? And so when I met Tom and we started really working on our relationship and he was the man for me, I realized that I was using crying and tears as a manipulation. Yeah.
It's true.
And I realized that. And so what I started to do is I actually started to walk out the room when I started to cry, to the point where he's like, babe, why can't you cry in front of me? And I would say to him, because in a moment where we're arguing, if I was upset about something else, I'd happily cry in front of him. But in the moment of me and him arguing, my emotional state says cry. But in that moment, I know what it's doing to him. And the truth is that I don't want him to back down because he feels bad that I'm upset.
Then he's got to give in and take care of you.
Exactly. And I know that doesn't serve our relationship. So if I know that him backing off doesn't serve our relationship, I don't want to manipulate him with my tears. So I've said to him, sometimes I actually need to walk away so I can cry, so I can process how you've impacted me. And then I can come back and articulate it to you instead of using the tears to kind of make you act in a certain way.
I think that's wise. And I also want to point out that, you should be, I think women should be open to cry in front of their men.
Of course, yeah,
But
absolutely.
I think when it happens on like every 3 days because you didn't get something you wanted and there's a breakdown, then it starts to feel like a little bit manipulative in that sense where it's, the man doesn't feel like he can actually say what's on his mind. He just has to take care of you. And he wants you to be happy. The man wants you to be happy. He doesn't want you to be sad and crying.
Right.
No man lives their life thinking, I hope my woman cries today and is mad at me.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. It's not an intentional act. And so, and I know from our last conversation, you said you hadn't cried in a long time. This was about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Year and a half ago, I think. You were like, I haven't cried in a long time. I think you said, I don't remember the last time I cried.
I've really been working on it. And so I've really, even on this episode, I was allowing myself, but it's a conscious effort. It's a bloody conscious effort.
Well, when you block something for so long, you got to be conscious about it.
Yeah.
You got to allow yourself to feel.
I think part of it also was my ex-boyfriend, where I was like, no man's ever going to see me cry
Never
again.
gonna hurt me again.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah,
No.
100%.
And how's that show for you?
Yeah, it didn't quite
How's
work,
that working
right?
for you?
So
it works in certain external results, but it doesn't give you the internal harmony that you truly want long term.
Oh, okay, so here's the truth. As a businesswoman, it does serve me.
100%.
It serves me to be able to regulate my emotions. And in my personal life, I've used it to then be able to serve me, the emotional regulation thing. So that is super important. But then let's talk about also guys. Sometimes it serves guys to walk in and be an alpha male and to be strong and to put your chest out, right? Depending on what you're trying to achieve, it could be useful. Football, right?
Yeah, of
you
course.
walk out on the pitch, if you walk with your head hung and you kind of don't look confident, you're losing. So I understand why it can actually serve you. But also, it then can absolutely not serve you if you walk into a relationship, right, with your chest pushed out and you do that with a woman, I think that would end up causing
Yeah.
some friction
Yeah.
and, intimidation, which I don't think is healthy.
Well, here's the thing. I've heard so many times over and over again that women want their husbands or their partners, their men in their lives, to be more vulnerable with them. I've heard this many, many times over the last 5-6 years since I got into the masculinity work. And then I would be, men would come to me and say, okay, Lewis, I'm going to go and I'm going to finally be vulnerable with my wife. She's been asking me for years that I'm too closed off. I'm too stoic. I don't show emotion. I never am sensitive. And I've always felt like I've had to protect the family. I've had to make sure I'm taking care of things and making sure she's taken care of. And I've got to be in a different state. I can't be sensitive in those moments, but I'm going to try it. And then they go and try and they let their guard down in sense of opening their heart. They start to feel a little sensitive, or when there's a breakdown, they allow themselves to process and cry in front of their woman. And a lot of them have come back to me and said, she's not able to receive it with me being vulnerable. She can't see me cry. It turned her off. She felt afraid. She felt like I wasn't protecting her and all these things. So when a man feels like a woman is actually going against them when they're being vulnerable, they're going to say, never again am I going to show vulnerabilities with my woman again. If she can't handle it, why would I do this? She's been telling me for years she wants this. I'm doing it and she can't handle it. Then men were going to go back into, I'm just going to take care of things. I'm going to be the protector and provider, and I'm not going to show emotion. And so I also think it's important for women to really take a look in the mirror and say, can I receive my man if he cries in front of me? Mm-hmm. Can I receive him? In a previous relationship, I cried once and she laughed at me. And I remember saying, thank God I'm confident enough in myself that I'm going to keep crying. In a movie or in a sad time or whatever, I'm going to keep crying because I don't care if she cries at me. I don't care. But if I wasn't at a place where I was confident in myself yet, I'd be like, okay, I'm never going to cry again. Oh, you're right. If you're laughing at me, why would I cry? And so you've got to be, I think women get the opportunity to be conscious as well and say, could I truly, if my man of 10 years that I'm married to, or my boyfriend of 2 years who I've never seen cry, if he cried, I mean like a little tear or an ugly cry, could I be a loving presence for him? And would I actually love him more? Would I be more turned on? Would I be excited about having an emotionally evolved man in my life and not just a single emotion man? Mm-hmm. Would that excite me or would it scare me? And if it scares you, then you got to take a look in the mirror because you're influencing. I'm not saying it's a man's responsibility, but you're influencing a man to be closed off more. And more closed off men cause more harm. So you just got to ask yourself, what is inside of me that isn't allowing for a man to be emotional in front of me? And I get it's all timing and situations, and you want to be aware of that, but just ask yourself that. Again, it's not right and wrong, but if women want men to be more emotionally vulnerable and sensitive, they've got to be able to receive it with care and not make fun of them, not look down on it, and not think they're weak when they're sensitive.
God, this is such a trick. I thank you. I love this conversation because it's very tricky. I can actually imagine in that moment, right, where the woman is like, she laughs at you, like, we can dismiss her. What a fucking bitch. Like, how can she be so mean? But at the same time,
I have compassion for it too.
What if she was brought up with a father that was super stoic, and in that moment where she's just actually like, oh shit, I don't know how to respond, and her reaction of laughing is automatic, but not because she actually finds it funny.
Right. It's funny because we had a conversation, like, I don't know, an hour afterwards, and she goes, listen, I know I'm not supposed to laugh and think it's weak, but just I've been so conditioned to think that a man crying is weak. And I was just like in shock that you cried. And again, it doesn't mean it's okay or it's right or any of these things, but I am able to look from out of myself and have compassion for that because I know that her father left her when she was younger and she never felt like she trusted any men. And all these things. So it doesn't mean it's okay, and it doesn't mean it's, but it's just, all right, this is where you're at in your level of your relationship and how you respond to vulnerability. And it was another reason why I was like, okay, this relationship isn't for me, This happened in multiple previous relationships. It's like when I would be vulnerable, I would get made fun of, laughed, or wouldn't be received well. by almost every woman that I've been with. And so, again, why would men open up and be vulnerable if they're going to get laughed at, if they're not going to be received well, if they're going to be made fun of? It doesn't feel good. And so I'm calling out to all women listening and watching. Figure out what it is inside. I know you say you want your man to be more sensitive and vulnerable, but when it happens, you've got to really honor the space. Honor the sacredness of your man being vulnerable if he's never been vulnerable. Lean in, comfort him, guide him. You don't have to say anything. Just hold him, touch him. Say, I'm here for you. I got you. You're safe. Because a man doesn't feel safe typically when he's vulnerable if he's not been trained on how to feel safe in that environment. So allow your man to release decades of pain in front of you. It might be a small tear. It might be a moment of something, but that moment could open his heart and start the process of healing and bringing harmony to the relationship.
God, I think it's because, if I can just project of why women may get uncomfortable when a guy is vulnerable, because I actually think it's very important. There's so much fear that we've been conditioned as women to see men as the stoicness, as the person that's going to save me. Now, here's the tricky thing, Lewis. I absolutely want my husband to save me. Someone's breaking into the house. So
100%. It's situational.
Yeah, but
you want to feel safe when there's, an attack.
Yes.
But when there's a sensitive moment and you're on the couch and there's something coming up for you, there's no one attacking you, you've got to allow the man to let his guard down and be vulnerable.
Correct. And I think what we end up doing is going, oh, he's vulnerable. Shit, he can't save me from the
person. He can't take care of me. He can't pay the bills. He can't provide for me, all these things.
And here's the thing. It's not, I think it's just the confusion we have that it has to be one or the
100%,
other.
I get it.
Even when I talk to Tom about my own career, right? It's like I was a stay-at-home wife for 8 years. I was taking care of him, putting clothes out and cooking for him. I wanted 4 children. And now I don't cook for him at all and I never do the laundry. So it's like I had evolved, but what he prided himself on is that we're the couple that can navigate changes, but also navigate masculine and feminine to the point where if you think of masculine and feminine as being a spectrum, right? I'm actually more in the middle. I can bounce between being more masculine and being more feminine. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. And so can Tom. And so because we both can, we actually understand when he's standing in his feminine or he's standing in his masculine and then vice versa. And now it's not an either or. It's not, well, hang on a minute. If he's vulnerable, it means he can't protect me. Or if he's protecting me, then he can't be vulnerable.
Exactly. And I think, women just got to learn how to process that and receive that and know that. Now, listen, if your man's like in breakdown every day and crying constantly, then you may be some concern there and he may need some support in getting out of that. But just the normal range of emotions that human beings have and laughing, loving, crying. If you don't feel like you're capable of doing that, you're shutting something off inside of you. If you don't feel safe with your most intimate partner who's supposed to love and accept you the most, if you're not accepted by them, then who in the world will accept you? So imagine the fears and insecurities that are tied to that if the person you give the most trust to cannot receive your emotions. And I'm not saying screaming emotions and hysterical emotions and anger emotions. I'm saying like your vulnerabilities, your sadness, like your fears, you know what I mean? And I just think that's something we can all work on. Men receiving their women better, women receiving their men better. But it starts with looking at yourself, facing yourself first.
And especially if you, like your story where you were saying that you were brought up with parents that weren't necessarily like emotionally intelligent enough to be able to help guide you. And I believe they were 20 years old when they had...
They were 19 when they had my brother. I mean, again, they didn't know how to love each other.
So thinking about that and then thinking about you as this little 5-year-old Lewis, anytime if you even became vulnerable, I can only assume you were either mocked, put down, for...
I was very sensitive growing up, but then I would be made fun of, laughed at, picked on in school and sports. And that caused me to say, I want to fit in, I want to belong, I want to be accepted. So it means I got to be tough, I got to be strong, I can't show emotion. And I almost need to dominate others in sports to show how worthy I am, right? So I need to be bigger, faster, stronger. And when I tackle someone, I need to really make them feel pain so that they never want to get up. When I, dunk on someone, I need to make sure that I give them an extra elbow when I fall down to make sure they don't mess with me. Whatever it is, I need to make sure that I have full force and dominance in sports. And this win-lose mindset is always a lose-lose. There's no winner in that. I don't win anything from that. I might win the game, but I lose the lesson. And I lose my harmony and my peace inside of me. I might make a lot of money and build a business, but then at what price to my peace and to my harmony? And so my whole goal is to figure out how to keep unwinding this, because it's going to be a process forever. I'm going to continue to make mistakes. I'm going to continue to be out of integrity, but the goal is to stay as conscious as possible, have the accountability and the support as frequently as possible to stay on track and stay in harmony.
You had a quote that really hit me, and it's really important again that I understand men and where they come from. And this quote really hit me. The problem is that toughness doesn't stop, and it grows like cancer until it strangles all other feelings. I was like, oh God, I've never thought of toughness as being like that. And then with everything we're talking about, understanding when you were younger, the vulnerability, you were teased, mocked, bullied for it. Okay, so you got tough. And now in that toughness—
And then I had a lot of anger.
You had to, but I'm sure in those moments, people are now showing you more respect. They're kind of like getting more, quote unquote, in line. And so the toughness is actually teaching you a lesson, a false lesson, but it was teaching you a lesson. And then in that journey for 25, 30 years, no wonder your feelings were strangled.
Yeah, I was out of integrity with myself internally because I was getting external results living one way, but not getting the internal results of peace and harmony and alignment. Because I was living in anger, resentment, and a lack of forgiveness from all the things from the past. And a feeling of, I'm never gonna let anyone abuse me, take advantage of me, or abandon me again. So if this ever comes up and I'm triggered, I'm gonna block myself so it never happens. As opposed to just saying, life is going to happen. People are going to do what they do. I can interpret it as abandonment and abuse, or I can interpret it as something else of this and not take it personally. And I can create new meaning from the events that are occurring. It doesn't mean I have to like something. I might be disappointed still, but I don't need to be angry about it all. That doesn't serve my mission or my health. So again, I go back to priority 1 and 2, health and mission. If it's not useful for my health, why am I allowing it to consume and create a cancer inside of me? So again, it doesn't mean I'm this perfect human being. I'm going to be upset and angry at times, but it's allowing me. That's why I have coaching and accountability every couple of weeks to get me back on track, to process it, to talk about it, to get it out. I didn't like this thing. Okay, let's get it out and get back to the vision, get back to your mission, get back to who you are, which is a loving, passionate, wise, conscious human being. And that takes consistent practice.
If you want to hear confessions of a former cheater and learn the signs men give before they actually cheat, then click here right now. You've openly confessed that you had cheated on your ex-wife multiple times.
Right.
How do you go from falling in love, proposing, marrying, and then breaking her heart and cheating on her?